Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Sports. I am Ralph LaBella.
And I'm Ron Sen. Well, sports keeps on giving, and we have a panoply of subjects to cover today. The first is a very serious injury to a youngster at the Yankee game the other day, where Frazier hit a ball that struck the youngster in an area beyond the protective netting. And the issue is, how much netting is enough? Does netting interfere with the fan experience? All I know is that nobody wants to see injuries to any fans for any reason.
No, I was watching the game and Todd Frazier was up and he hit a line drive. Normally, when I go to games, you always worry about if a righty's up the right field side. Mm-hmm. You don't worry too much about them pulling the ball in close. You know, down deep, as you know, right. They can pull it. And same thing when a lefty's up, you got to watch out if you're on the left field side. In this case here, he pulled it. But the netting, even if they had the same netting that the Red Sox have, I don't know if that would have helped because it was past the dugout, a little past the dugout. But where it's in close to on the first row, it might have caught it, you know, the angle situation. But, you know, people, they weren't looking. And that.
Well, I was at a Red Sox game years ago, and it was five seats down, first row on the third base side. Somebody had given me tickets, and I was there with Ellen, and I said, Ellen, we have to pay attention because we're really close. And if you don't pay attention, you could get one in the kisser.
But I remember, I used to say that to my son when we went to the games. Again, when we were sitting, a lot of times we're on the left field side. When a lefty was up, I said, you really got to watch this because we're in close, you know, right behind the dugout, up a little. And you watch that, you don't worry as much about when the righty's up for pulling at on that angle. Well, but in this case, it was a righty.
And Felger's talking today like, well, you know, that would never happen to me and my kids because I'd be expecting and I could handle a 105 mile an hour ball hit at me if I'm only 100 feet away. Well, first of all, you know, you might be paying for your hot dog or you get distracted for a second looking at something else. You're not ready all the time. I mean, it's like saying a batter should never get hit because he's able to be alert and get out of the way of the pitch. You can't do it sometimes.
Yeah, in that situation, they wouldn't be as alert if a lefty was up. With a righty up, that they would be if a lefty was up, because you always worry about that, not getting around and just lining. That's where you see most of the foul balls go.
Well, the second issue is, you know, we've been to plenty of hockey games, and the netting really doesn't interfere with your ability to watch the game. And you, if your experience is so impeded by a fishnet, then don't go to the game. If you're so miserable, just don't go.
Well, look at the people behind the plate all these years that love it. You know, they're behind the plate. They have to have it go out. I don't know how far, but the Yankees only have it where the on-deck circle is.
Okay.
It's not like the Red Sox. The Red Sox extended it out.
Well, and I thought it was mandated, but it's only kind of recommended.
No, they're going to change that. I think they're going to change that by the next game. They're going to have it changed. I mean, that was bad. I think she's doing okay, they said.
Yeah, I haven't heard any details. The second news item of the day is Aaron Hernandez's brain autopsy showed apparently severe CTE. So now, I'm not saying that he murdered people because he had CTE. He could just be a bad guy who happened to also have CTE. Now, how that affected his own emotional reactions to a prolonged incarceration, et cetera, did that contribute to his suicide? I don't know. But it just shows that even at a young age, you could still have significant brain damage from contact sports.
Was he with the Patriots from 2010 to 2013?
Oh, I don't know specifically.
I think it was around those years. And I wonder when the two murders where he was found not guilty, the two murders in Boston, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder when they occurred. Because I think it was way before Lloyd. It was
well, in any event.
But I mean, if that happened before, around the time the Pats got him, I mean, they're going to get money anyway. But how much? I mean, they're going on it. I think it's on their own. I mean, they're not with the other players. I think they put $700 million aside for these lawsuits.
I don't know how much
they want $20 million.
Right. So, again, this is going to be fought out in the courts for many, many years. You know, the NFL has a checkered history in their willingness to combat injuries to their players as far as rule changes. First, they were in denial forever, and you can't have it both ways. They say, well, we're trying to have safer helmets. Well, it's inherently an unsafe game, you know, and it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out over the long term.
I think it's going to be between 30 and 50 million a team eventually that they're going to have to give up. It's going to be close to $1 billion. I would say,
Right.
I think it's going to be around $800 million, close to $1 billion, that they're going to have to pay out eventually.
Which brings us, I mean, obviously the NFL is a major business. It has about $10 billion in revenue, and one of the issues is whether Roger Goodell is going to take them to, the owners are talking apparently among themselves, to $25 billion, which obviously you need to expand the number of teams, the number of venues, whether it's Mexico or London or wherever the next place is. But for the most part, the only games I've watched this season are the 2 Patriots games.
I know, I haven't watched any other games either.
You know, so there aren't that many compelling games, and there's a lot of really unsavory news floating around about the NFL.
They're losing a lot of fans. There's a number of reasons why they are, but they are losing a lot of fans.
Right, and obviously, you know, my son sent me a note saying the Patriots are a dirty team, and I said they only reflect the league they play in, and he said, well, I can't disagree with you there, but you see owners willing to spend a fortune on stadiums, but look in Los Angeles, the Chargers and the LA Rams together didn't draw as many fans as the USC did playing Texas. So that's a pretty strong statement.
That's unbelievable. But you look at the Pats now, they're worth $3.8 billion. Dallas is 4-point-something billion. Yankees are 3.8 billion. And 2 English soccer teams are in the 3s. I mean, it's a lot of money. Most of these teams are worth at least $2 billion.
Right, and of course that makes the entry fee, if you expand, so high that, first of all, you have to be a multi-billionaire to even consider owning a team, but the existing owners get an upfront payment from whatever team expands.
You wonder how many people, you know, with big money are going to try to get involved in football nowadays with these big lawsuits that are going to be coming. You know, you may not see as many people.
Well, I think that younger people are probably going to be reluctant to let their kids play certain contact sports. Now, obviously in soccer, they've changed the recommendations for heading even in youth sports, because there's been a lot of testing done where they gave kids tests, then had heading practice for a half an hour, and then gave them another test, and they showed a decline in performance just after heading practice in soccer. And then within 24 hours, they were back to their baseline. So, but if you show a change, then if you play soccer every day of your life and head the ball a lot, then why wouldn't you get the same type of injury, at least in maybe some athletes who are more susceptible based on what we don't know?
When we play basketball, how many times you under the basket when a ball comes out, you don't see it, hits you in the head and kind of like makes you buckle. That can lead to concussions.
Sure.
You know, it's.
I mean, I think do you remember having any concussions when you played sports?
I think it was mostly from that.
Okay.
From a basketball hitting me in the head. I mean, I got hit with a softball in the head that almost knocked me out.
Well, I specifically had 2 episodes, which I think in retrospect were concussions, both colliding with the same player, Ron Lee from Lexington, so who went on to a pro career in the NBA. One subject that comes up is, which is that there is no right answer, who is the most admired coach of all times? You know, and I don't even know how to answer it. In the book I'm reading called The Captain's Class, the author makes the statement that Vince Lombardi was the most admired coach of all time. And you know, obviously he had tremendous success with Green Bay. He was very quotable. He had a hard road to get to be coach of the Packers, and he felt that he was being discriminated against because of his Italian-American heritage, which I don't know if he was or wasn't. But they had interviews with Willie Davis, his fantastic defensive end, and he said, yeah, Lombardi found a lot of players who had chips on their shoulders, who maybe weren't recognized and had something to prove, because he wanted guys who were hungry like him.
I would say Lombardi. I mean, around here, Red Auerbach, but he wasn't as well liked in other cities, especially when he used to pull out the cigar, and stuff like that. But probably Lombardi was the most respected.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of territory to cover. A lot of people like John Wooden a lot.
I was just going to say Wooden.
So, and then in hockey, people have strong feelings about Scotty Bowman, who won Stanley Cups with 3 different teams. And then, of course, in other countries, they have different sports that their coaches are revered. So, if you try to say, I mean, obviously we think very highly of Gino Auriemma for what he's done in women's basketball. And you'll find the same arguments depending on the sport and the location. The Pat Summitt fans in Tennessee, going back a ways, that probably not so many Bud Wilkinson fans from Oklahoma left, but there've been a lot of great coaches in different sports.
Well, one of my favorites is Bobby Knight. I liked his coaching style. His teams are always prepared. I love watching him. Every time his teams are on TV, I'd watch them, just because I knew the type of game they would play, motion offense, pick away from the ball and all that. So I really liked him. Not many people did, though.
Right, and the second, one of the other questions that comes up is, what's the factor that determines the greatness of a team over an extended period of time? And that is it related to coaching, culture of the team, money, the ability to outspend the other teams, a collection of great talent like the Pittsburgh Steelers of the late 70s, or having the greatest player of all time? And this book is trying to examine that. I'm not to the end, but if you look at some of the great dynasties of when it started, when it ended. So Auerbach really hadn't had any success in a big way until Bill Russell got there. And the Celtics' success ended when Bill Russell left for a really long time. And you see the same thing in other sports. There was a player in rugby named Buck Shelton, who was a Maori native, and he was in the World Cup of Rugby, had a serious injury during a game, played through the game, and people couldn't even believe, his teammates couldn't even believe that he made it through the game. He was knocked out during the game, came back. He had a severe injury to the midsection, let's say. He needed 16 stitches to a delicate part of the body after the game. But people universally respected this guy, and as soon as he came off the team, they'd won 5 world championships in a row. The team just immediately went downhill.
Okay, who are your 3 top, let's see, your 3 top players in dynasties, the 3 teams with the...
All right. My first would be Bill Russell for the Celtics. My second would be Maurice Richard with the Montreal Canadiens. And probably the third would be Michael Jordan with the Bulls.
Geez, you got me and you agreed on the first and the third. Definitely Bill Russell with the Celtics was the greatest dynasty. Michael Jordan and the Bulls, to me, was the 3rd best dynasty. And Tom Brady and the New England Patriots is the 2nd best dynasty. When you talk about dynasties over a 15 or 16-year period, how many times they were in a Super Bowl, which is entirely different than Bill Russell with the Celtics, where 5 players start. And if you have 2 or 3 superstars, that's enough. And the greatest player ever in Bill Russell, and the 2nd greatest player ever in Michael Jordan, winning 6. If he didn't take that baseball with 2 years off, he would have had 8 in a row. So he really had 6 in a row when he played. And then again, you look at the Patriots. Football is entirely different. You have 11 players on each side of the ball playing, and you have Tom Brady. I mean, you have to say there's no player in football that can compare to what Tom Brady has done.
Right. Well, in this book, the author argues that the Patriots aren't in the same category. He calls them Tier 1 and Tier 2. He puts them near the top of Tier 2. But his Tier 1 team, one of them is Hungarian soccer team in the early 1950s, who they lost 2 games in 6 years.
Forget soccer. Just because you played soccer, soccer's out.
So anyway, what he talked about Bill Russell and what was called the Coleman play. I think it was the Syracuse team. It was the 1957 NBA championship, and with about 40 seconds to go in the game, the Celtics were down 1, and there was an outlet pass to Coleman at half court. Well, somehow Russell, who was under his own basket, raced down court as a 23-year-old and blocked the guy's short shot at the basket. There's no film of the play because television wasn't really big back then. Only Johnny Most saying, "Blocked by Russell, blocked by Russell." And the Celtics came back and won in overtime. And that was kind of the springboard first championship for the Celtics. And all I could think of when I read about that was the Chamberlain block on LeBron block on Iguodala a couple of years ago. It's just an incredible play. But it's interesting to try to examine what goes into greatness. And you know, we use great too easily. I mean, you know, so you win a league championship, you're excellent. But there's a big difference between, you know, historic greatness on a world scale and doing well at your own level.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before we get to the Patriots, there's more to talk about. One of the intriguing aspects of coaching I find is seeing what coaches sometimes encourage their players to read. Now, some players, I remember in old stories about baseball, coaches didn't want the players to read. They didn't want them to watch movies. They thought it was somehow bad for their eyes. But, for example, Coach Shelley at Melrose has all the team members read a book called Toughness by Jay Billis, which talks about not only basketball toughness, but toughness in life, willing to come back and do the things you need to do. And there's one particular story I remember about Billis talking about his dad, who really worked hard, left early, ran a family business, would come home later in the evening around 9 o'clock, and he asked Billis to change out the contact paper in his sister's vanity in the sister's bathroom. So now Billis says, look, we were not poor, we were well off. He said, so the vanity's a mess, this contact paper, you know how it is, all stuck down. So he scrapes it a little bit and he says, this is really hard, and he just throws some new contact paper on, and that's it. So the dad gets home at 9 o'clock, he looks at the job, he doesn't say anything, he scrapes it all up, spends an hour and a half scraping it, and then puts new contact paper down, and he never said anything to bill us. And he said, I was humiliated because my dad gave me a job to do, expected me to do it right, I didn't do it right, and here he is, working for 15 hours, and then he comes back and does it. So he said, I took a big lesson for that in not only my basketball, but my life. He's a national commentator and an attorney in North Carolina. But those are the lessons that I think, for example, Coach Kelly wants to impart to the players. Anson Dorrance, the coach at UNC women's soccer, that's won 22 national championships in 34 years, has the players read a book called The Leadership Moment, which talks about leadership choices in a lot of different industries and a lot of different areas, trying to teach the girls something, the young women, something important. What do you think, Ralph?
Well, Bill Belichick does that all the time before the season begins. He has a speaker come in. He had Marvin Hagler come in and speak to them about toughness. And I know you're big on toughness, mental toughness with your teams. And I think it's great. You know, Coach Kelly, we know him. My kids played for him. He makes your high school career terrific, I feel, when you play for him. And, you know, he's that type of guy, just like Coach Brady for the basketball program.
There's a story about Belichick, who apparently gave players a playbook to read, and in the back page there'd be a $100 bill.
Yeah.
And, you know, most of the players would say something about the $100 bill, whereas I can't remember which player it was, but the player didn't say anything about it. Like, obviously he didn't read the playbook. No. And so if you don't read the playbook that Belichick gives you with 100 in the back, then no hundo, you're no draft choice ever.
Talk about that. I mean, Belichick's just, I mean, he's tough. You know, the Patriots, you talk about mental toughness, there it is right there with the Patriots. You know, all these years, you know, the way they prepared themselves for the season. But that's true. I mean, you know, mental toughness is, to me, that's the number one. When you talk about, you know, players, especially high school, middle school players, I mean, if they understand mental toughness, you know, and they prepare properly, they're going to be very good athletes.
No matter who you are, no matter what sport you're in, and certainly both academically and in your business career in the future, you're going to have adversity, and you have to be able to respond to it in some positive way. And as for young players, you know, all the time I hear, well, I'm disappointed that this didn't happen, or my kid didn't have this opportunity. Well, ask yourself, how did this player impact the game? How did they change the game? So we've seen so many players, for example, in football, the Padrinis or the Jack Pizzottis, that it's instantly apparent how they change the game, how the defense has to adapt to them, or how they act defensively. And most players, understandably, can't do that because they don't have the athletic ability or the game understanding or the toughness to do it. And that's not a knock on them, but the exceptional players find a way to change the game.
Yeah, I mean, the real good players, they anticipate better than anybody else. They're way ahead of the game. They're thinking the game out throughout the game. If they're sitting on the bench, they're thinking the game. If they're taking a break, what am I going to do? They're watching the players out on the floor. I know when I was coaching baseball a lot and basketball, I would tell my players that are sitting on the bench, I don't want you talking to each other. First thing is, when we're at bat, I want you watching the pitcher. We get a guy on base, I want you watching the moves. I want you watching the catcher, see what type of arm he has. See if the pitcher has a good move to first, you know. And that's the way you talk the game out. And that's what I used to tell my players. If you're going to talk, I want you talking about the game, what you're seeing out there, not about what you're going to be doing tonight.
Well, I'm watching the Red Sox game the other night, and the Orioles left fielder, he can't throw the ball in the infield. Never mind, so you know that if they're going to go, if there's an opportunity to run on him. And as a fan, you want to look at those little things, but you see how players, well, Jackie Bradley, he's not only got good range and jumping ability, he's got a great arm, and there aren't many center fielders anymore who can throw like that.
But you know, you look at the Red Sox, you look at the Yankees, both of those teams are hot now. they're confident, they're going out there playing, thinking they can win every game now. So they're going out there with a different attitude. You talk about mental toughness. Where was the mental toughness last year when they played Cleveland and Cleveland destroyed them? And they all wilted. Yeah, they're feeling good about themselves now because they're starting to come up with big hits again, good pitching. Same thing with the Yankees. Earlier in the season, after that great start, they blew so many. The Yankees should be 10 games ahead of the Red Sox if you watch so many games they blew. But now that they're winning, they're going out there with the confidence. They're in the game. They're thinking the game. Like, again, mental toughness is when things aren't going good, you got to be mentally tough to turn things around. And a lot of players aren't mentally tough.
Well, moving on to the NFL, last year we heard obviously about the Patriots and Tom Brady and how the Patriots should accept the punishment that was given. And one of the proponents of accepting the punishment was Jerry Jones. This year, Ezekiel Elliott gets a 6-game suspension and Jerry Jones is saying, well, it's not fair. And apparently, Jones has appointed him as the 7th de facto member of the compensation committee and is holding up Goodell's extension. Goodell has been getting paid around $40 million a year, and Jones is leading some other owners saying, like, why is the commissioner getting this kind of money? What is he actually doing for his money?
But how can you really, I know I talked to you about this a while ago, how can you really respect the owners in football? And in most of the sports, but especially football. When they know the concussion problem is serious and they're trying to hide it, you know? And I mean, they just go, and Jones knows, he knows that Elliott beat up his girlfriend 5 times in 3 days. And she didn't go forward in the case. They got the reports right there. They've got the calls. They know it. And he's over there knocking Goodell. He should keep his mouth shut.
Well, obviously the NFL owners are very successful businessmen and they want what's good for their business, and the business is keeping the star player on the field regardless of whatever transgressions they've committed or whatever other issues they have off the field. And that's never going to change. As for the Patriots, they rebounded after a catastrophic first game loss to Kansas City, but it doesn't look like everything is well down in Foxborough. It seemed like a lot of unhappy campers, and you have to ask yourself, why is that? Branch got signed to big money and didn't even play practically the second game. Malcolm Butler didn't start, and there's no way that anybody's going to tell us that Eric Rowe is better than Butler. Gilmore fell down and didn't even get up on a play. And they asked him about whether he feels that he has to prove himself on the Patriots. He said, why should I? Something like that. So the attitude, now, whether it's money, whether there's too many new players that haven't been in the system, I don't really know, but I don't feel very confident going forward.
Well, Belichick's biggest mistake, his biggest mistake was not giving Butler $8 to $10 million a year for 4 years, and getting Gilmore for $13 million. That was a mistake. I mean, he's no superstar cornerback. He's pretty good. You know, he can play against the bigger ends, but I think that was a huge mistake there. And you can see it in Butler. I mean, he's trying, but he's not trying like he used to. He'd be in your face the whole game. Now he's off to the
I mean, you wonder in the back of a guy's head is saying, like, I got to stay healthy so I can get the next payday. So do I really want to stick my nose in there? And then, of course, the Patriots had specific disaster problems trying to cover these bunch formations where people run pick routes out of them. And, you know, they're going to see a lot of that in the near future.
But you know what gets me? How they're getting stuck on these picks. But that game, the first game when Gilmore let the receiver go,
right?
He knew it was going to be a cover 2 on that side. But the way they came out with the formation was different. So McCourty came over and was taking that second receiver. So he knew. I mean, I knew by watching the film. I knew you have to stay with the because there's 2-on-2. You had 2 backs. Now you didn't have McCourty back there.
I remember in the Super Bowl in '86, I can't remember which the receiver's name for Green Bay, but I'm saying, like, oh no, they've got Lawyer Malloy against the slot receiver for Green Bay, and I'm like, this is a disaster. And
I remember that.
Yeah,
on the left side, the defensive left
side. It turned
side.
into a touchdown. So
But,
I mean, you know,
but Gilmore, I mean, that's a big mistake. Not identifying that and staying with the receiver, and then getting knocked over. Why don't they, when they have two, they know they're going to run the pick play, especially down
Right,
the goal
just
line.
switch.
Why don't you just stay, you pick the guy who comes here, and I'll pick the guy who comes there.
well, apparently that's the way it's supposed to happen, but you got to communicate.
But I heard them, though, after the game, I heard someone talk, and they said, what you should do is one of the backs have got to come up closer, and they got to pinch that guy so he doesn't come out set, just like they did
Yeah, in the
against
Super
Seattle.
Bowl. Yeah.
You know?
So obviously another interesting happening at Foxborough was they changed the turf just after new turf had been installed in May. So now I don't know if they thought that it was contributing to the knee injuries, whether in fact that's real or just our imagination, but there wasn't really a lot of discussion about why it happened. It just happened.
They said it was too soft, the turf.
I know, like who doesn't
Maybe
like?
they couldn't run fast enough on it.
Well, it's the same for everybody.
But they got burned so many times, so that couldn't be it.
Well, it is interesting. Now, as we talked about, there hasn't been a lot to watch in NFL, and the television ratings, I think, are down almost 10%, which they were down last year. So I don't know what the NFL's plan is to try to enhance fans' interest.
Well, I know a lot of fans are upset about players kneeling down or sitting down. You know, a lot of fans are upset about that. I mean, I'm upset about a lot of things. I don't watch certain programs anymore because I don't like the people that are on it, because to me they're hurting the country. And I think in that situation, people are supporting them, but guess what? It's the fans, not the people that are supporting them. And if the fans don't like it, you know they've lost a lot of fans because of that. I only watch the Patriots now. I won't watch the games because of that. I'll watch the Patriots. And if someone, one thing I would guarantee you, if one Patriot sat down and kneeled down, I wouldn't watch another Patriot game. That's the way I feel. Tell me why you're doing it before you do it.
Well, I think that, we've talked about this a little bit, and social justice is a legitimate concern in the United States. If you look at, for example, transgender people last year, there were more murders of transgender people than in any year in history, and that's going to be eclipsed this year. So now obviously there's no big transgender lobby for the NFL, but people do care about social justice. And there's just as many people who care about social justice who won't watch the NFL for the reason that they perceive a lack of social justice
is it our
in the
country's
NFL.
fault for these people, transgender people being killed?
Well,
It's their own citizens that are killing them.
well,
I mean, and how many people? Out of everybody I know, I haven't heard one person knock that. Things nowadays are way different than they used to be when I was young.
I guess if you tolerate violence in one sphere, then you may tolerate it in another. As for the Patriots' other problems, Stephen Gostkowski seems to still be having some problems on extra points. Obviously he doesn't want to be considered a liability, but it seemed like last year he was slicing the ball, so he moved the ball over to the left hash mark for extra points. Now he's kicking it straight, so he missed off the goalpost.
But no, his biggest problem is that their line drives run. Before, you used to kick the high ones, and they used to go, you know what I mean? It was like a quarterback throwing a football, and now it's just like a line drive, and you're seeing the ball go like this. That's not good.
Yeah, and then we have to concern ourselves with injuries, as obviously the Patriots seem to have a lot of injuries in the skill positions. They can move some of the receivers into those positions, but compensating for a loss of Gronkowski, if in fact he's limited. Amendola's back from a concussion, but all right, he's going to get hit in the head next game.
Well, Cannon, what about Cannon being out?
Right.
Who's going to block Watt?
Yeah.
They're going to have to put Allen on wherever Watt is, beside if it's Fleming or whoever, or Waddle.
Right.
If it's one of those two guys. I think Waddle's going to be good. From seeing him, a lot of people are knocking him, but he's young. He didn't look too bad to me in the exhibition games.
Well, we'll see. And certainly the running back stepped up a little bit. I expect to see Dion Lewis probably a little bit more in receiver mode. James White was terrific last week.
I remember his first year when he used to run the ball and be afraid of fumbling it. And now you see where he is now. He's one of the best backs in football now. They can put him in the slot.
Well, I know, and people, they want to value him as a running back. He's a different type of player. He's a hybrid player, and just like the old H-back, the tight end kind of position,
Yeah.
so who blocked in, received. Now, White's no doubt proven his value, and obviously is a favorite of Brady as well. We'll be right back. We'll switch gears and talk a little bit about the mechanics of coaching, and probably the most important aspect of coaching isn't X's and O's or conditioning or drills, it's communication. Communication between coach and player, player and player, and coaches and coaches. And a big part of that is trust. They did a survey of Division I women's players and asked how many of you truly completely trust your coach? And the answer was about 40%. So
What sport?
basketball.
Wow.
And the issue is that obviously they come in with one set of expectations, and they get there and they find out things are different. There's another player or two ahead of them. I remember when a local player was going to be recruited in high-level basketball, and she was smart enough to know, am I being brought in to play, or I'm brought in as a backup or a potential backup for another player? And most of the time, coaches don't like to get into that kind of discussion. They say, well, everyone has to earn their spot, but that's not necessarily how it really is.
Yeah, in women's college basketball, you see a lot of transfers. I mean, there are a lot in men's basketball too, college, but I think there's more in women's basketball.
Well, I think if you change the rules so that people didn't have to sit out a year, it would
It'd be even
skyrocket. And obviously, do you want to go in and try to play at an elite program, or come in as a bench player, or play at a lesser program, or be a bench player on an elite program?
Yeah, like look at UConn. I mean, UConn's team last year, they had a great team. They lost in the semifinals, and they had a couple of players that, couple of freshmen that weren't in the top 100 out of the players coming out of high school. And then this year they got 4 coming in, and 3 of the 4 are tremendous basketball players. What's going to happen to those 2 girls? They played a little last year, but now they're going to go behind at least 2 of those girls. So what do they say? We're sophomores this year. If we don't get much playing time, they're going to probably transfer. And the coaches want them to, probably.
Yeah, probably.
So they can save those scholarships.
Right. Most of the time, if you have a scholarship, they're not going to take it away from you.
No.
But they're going to, in a lot of programs, they make people's lives miserable. So players know that they're not wanted, and they're willing to go somewhere else. Well, we're coming down to the final couple of weeks of the regular season in baseball. The Red Sox clinched a playoff spot because they and the Yankees have both been playing well. But can anybody stop Cleveland?
Yeah, I think when I look at Cleveland's lineup, I think the Yankees lineup and the Red Sox lineup is as good as Cleveland's, but the Cleveland's pitching is a little deeper. Even though the Red Sox pitching's good and the bullpen's getting really sound, I just think Cleveland will keep the games close, low scoring, and they have a couple of players who come up with big hits when they need them.
What was really amazing, not only that Cleveland won 22 games in a row, which you think about the statistical improbability of that is, but during the first 20 games that they had won, they were 100 runs scored more than the other team. I mean, 5 runs a game, which is, in baseball, that's incredible. I mean, over the course of a season, a team like the Indians might be 200 plus over runs allowed, which is 1.3 runs a game. But this was 5 runs a game, which is easy to explain why they kept winning.
But I look at it, right, I don't see them as a power. I see the Yankees and Red Sox can compete with them. Houston is a good team. They got Correa back, and they're a lot better. They have Springer, who's real good. They got good pitching. It could go down, the Red Sox and Yankees could go down to that 4-game series that the Red Sox have with Houston at the end of the year. But I think the way the Red Sox are going, they got Cincinnati, who's terrible, 3 games.
Oh, and then in the National League, you had the Dodgers, who sprinted out way ahead of everybody, and then they lose 11 games in a row. How you have the best record in baseball and lose 11 games in a row?
My pick is Arizona coming out. Arizona, I think, is going to come out of the National League. I think the American League, the Yankees, the one problem the Yankees are going to have, even though they handle Minnesota well, if the Yankees end up in a wild card game, Minnesota saves Santana for the Yankees, it's going to be a low-scoring game, and you know what happens in them, whoever comes up with the big hit. Santana is very good. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. So that's going to be tough. The Yankees just swept them. I watched Santana pitch against them. The Yanks beat him in a low-scoring game, but he's the type of guy who could shut the Yanks down.
The team that's been sneaky good in the National League is the Cubs.
They don't have it. They're not going to win it. They don't have enough pitching run.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, Lester's not the same Lester. I don't know what they're going to do with him. They're not going to. I don't think they're going to start him off. But I don't think them. I think it's going to be the Arizona or the Dodgers.
Well, a lot of discussion emerged after Chris Sale got his 300th strikeout last night, whether he should have come out to pitch in the 8th inning. Tony Maserati insisted that Sale was lying when he said he didn't know he needed 1 strikeout to get to 300. I don't really know.
He was lying.
I don't really know that it really makes any difference.
I forget the guy who does the Celtics game before the games. Not Blakely, the other guy.
Kyle Draper?
Kyle Draper. He's over there arguing with one of the people on CSN last night. He goes, "What do you know?" He's knocking the guy. "What do you know? Of course you should have stayed in there. You know, the manager wants to get the favor of Seal. He wants Seal to be behind him and all that." He goes, "It's a great thing. There's 300 strikeout." I'm over there saying, "You idiot. What happened last year at Porcello? He had 99 pitches. He has 299 strikeouts. You're actually going to let him throw another 15 pitches in the 8th inning when you're up 8-0?
I think people think of it as it's like computer sports where you can play and you put the player out there and he doesn't get tired. He just plays to whatever his projected statistics are if you pitched him 100 innings. And in baseball, people do wear down. In all sports, people wear down. And
that was a dumb move. It really was.
No, I agree because he'd already thrown 99 pitches, and we know statistically the more pitches you throw over 100, the more taxing it is on you and for future performance.
So your pitcher will like you because you did that, and you're on his side. You got the 300. You saw him after he came out of the game, after the 8th inning. All the players are coming up to him, slapping hands, patting him on the back. They all knew that he needed 1 more strikeout. So, I mean, it was just a stupid thing to do. You wear down a play. You know that Seal's been tired lately.
Well, and he's had a history of fading in September with a much higher ERA during September. I think it's about 4 versus 3 in other months in his career. So, I mean, you have that track record to go on.
And if he did that, managers who do that, just so the player will like him, they're not good managers.
David Price is the new Andrew Miller.
Well, remember what I said last time? I said that he's going to be starting, he's not going to be relieving. You watch. He's going to be starting. He's going to be the number 2 starter. That's my prediction.
Okay.
In the playoffs.
I don't think they're really going to be able to build up his arm strength to throw enough pitches, so I think he's going to be a reliever. But, we'll see. He's had some success as a reliever in the playoffs. Pomerantz, I can't believe he's still successful because he throws so many pitches. He can't really pitch beyond 6 innings usually.
I think that's going to be the difference because you could have had Price pitch 2 games, pitch 5 innings the next game, pitch 6 innings the game after that, get up to 80 pitches, 90 pitches, which he's definitely, he's a starter, and you have him as your number 2 starter. His arm's going to be strong. If his elbow's good, his arm's going to be stronger than it's ever been in the playoffs. And you got a guy who can shut down a team. Now, Pomerantz, I don't trust him in the playoffs.
Well, the biggest thing that's been different for the Red Sox with this string of close games and extra inning games is 3 guys. Addison Reed, who's been very good since he stopped throwing the ball into the dirt. Austin Maddox, of all people, and Carson Smith, who looks like he's back from the dead after his Tommy John surgery. He's got a pretty tough slider, which looks to be good against both left and right-handers. So, I know that they don't really have a quality left-handed relief pitcher, but I don't think they really need them with those particular guys.
Yeah, they're going to have to make some tough decisions because they have a lot of people that.
Well, Matt Barnes can sit. That's one.
Could be on, playing in the playoffs.
Last night or the night before, Kelly, I didn't even know he had a changeup, but when you can throw 100, the changeup actually works. So. Maybe he's been working on it.
He has unbelievable stuff, though.
I know.
His ball moves.
That was the best I ever saw him throw because he had the changeup.
Well, the bullpen has saved him this year.
Oh, absolutely.
What are they, 15-4 or 16-4 in extra innings?
I think they're 15-3.
They're 15-3, and the Yankees are 6-7.
Well, they were tracking success of teams, I think, over the last 8 years, and 5 of those teams were near the top in extra inning wins, and usually it reflects a certain degree of toughness and obviously a good bullpen. So, we'll see. The unsung heroes of the team, to me this year, number 1, Kimball, who's been incredible. I think that number 1, it's hard to hit him because he never throws it over the middle of the plate. I mean, even the strikes don't really look like strikes. And the second one, who is a guy I really like, whom I think has a lot of heart and grit, is Christian Vasquez.
Oh, he's having a great year.
Yeah, I mean, he hadn't really hit much in the past, but he seemed to turn it around.
Now. He's DH in some games.
Yeah, I mean, most of the players offensively haven't done much relative to their past. Benintendi's had a good year, but obviously Pedroia's been out. Betts has been less than his best, but apparently he's had this chronic thumb injury, so maybe that's his problem.
Nunez is going to be big.
Yeah, if he's healthy enough.
If you can get him in here and play third base, because Devers, he's too many errors.
And then an X factor is Hanley Ramirez. Ramirez, when he's motivated and engaged, he's a pretty good hitter against good pitching. And I don't see the Red Sox as being materially different offensively than they were last year against Cleveland. So I expect if they get into a series against Cleveland, they're not going to hit. So
they could be facing the Yankees. You never know.
Who?
The Red Sox. I'm talking about in the finals.
Yeah, it's possible.
I mean, if the Yankees get by Minnesota, they can beat Houston or Cleveland.
Now, I don't know, how far behind is California from Minnesota right now?
California lost again. I think it's like a game and a half.
Okay, so, I mean, the Twins have a few good hitters. Their pitching isn't great.
Well, they got two good pitchers, Minnesota, though. They got Santana and, I forget the name of the other guy.
Oh, I know who you mean. Yeah, he's another Hispanic guy.
3-point-something ERA.
Yeah, but, it's kind of nice to see a small market team do well, and the Twins have hung in there pretty well. A lot of people thought it wouldn't happen, but they've done pretty well. As I guess the John Farrell detractors like me don't have so much to say right now. Now, the reality is when they've done serious studies of how much factor a manager has in determining wins and losses, it's supposed to be about 2 wins a year. So, I mean, obviously, all these extra inning games, if the relief pitchers don't pitch well, then Farrell looks like an idiot. But
yeah, he's gotten great relief pitching. The end of the season, it's been unbelievable, the relief pitching. I mean, they're winning these games in the 11th inning, 12th inning, 15th inning. They're shutting down teams. I mean, so 15-3 in extra inning games.
We've got a few minutes to talk about high school sports. Volleyball team's been doing really well. They're off to a fast start at 6-0, and they're tied for first in the Middlesex League with Winchester. They had a big win against Notre Dame of Hingham, whom they never had beaten in the past. So it's hard not to be enthusiastic. They've had great senior leadership from Jill Mercer, Lily Fitzgerald, Lydia Lombardo, and Saoirse Connolly, and a lot of promising young players too. So they go out to Frontier this weekend in South Deerfield, so that'll be another measuring stick for them.
What are they going out there for?
Well, it's home and home.
They want a nice road trip?
Some teams are reluctant to play Melrose, not to name names, Lincoln Sudbury. Lincoln Sudbury owes Melrose a game, and they just won't come here anymore, because I think every time Melrose played them, they beat them.
Well, how about Barnstable after Melrose crushed them that time?
Well, Barnstable is,
Barnstable
plays everybody, so, it's a long ride to
But
Barnstable.
I know their coach, for some reason, was upset. The Barnstable coach, Melrose beat them 3-1? 3-0?
Yeah, that was when they had Hannah and Laura Irwin, Colleen, really strong team. Good back row. So now football, another big win last week. They avenged a previous year's loss to Waltham, put up 42 points. And Waltham had beaten Newton North the week before, so I don't think Waltham's terrible. So, and they're facing a pretty good team in the
Watertown,
in Watertown tomorrow night, so that should be a pretty good game too.
I mean, we knew it. We knew their lines were going to be big and strong and tough. And every year, I mean, Morris does a great job. I mean, you talk about being mentally tough. They're one of the top teams in the state. They've been one of the top teams in the state probably the last 7 years. He's had great football teams. Players come back. And I was watching. I drove by coming home from work today. I drove by, I think it was the freshman practice. And they're saying that there are a lot of kids that aren't playing high school football A lot of kids dropped out. That freshman team looked like they had 40 kids on that team.
Well, the next town over, Stoneham, the word is that they're pretty good this year, have a lot of older players, seniors, but they have no freshman or JV team is what I heard, so they may not have enough players to play football next year. I don't know if that's a fact or what.
One other thing I want to talk about, I know you're a very humble person, but how about the Melrose Hall of Fame? You went to it Saturday night. Paula and Karen Sen were both inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well,
Pizzotti.
Well, I really enjoyed it because I liked hearing some of the older athletes, the Bernard brothers who got in for winning state championships in 1969 and 1972. They gave a lot of credit to their coach, Coach Ball, and one of them said that the wrestling was the first time he'd ever really had success in his life, and that gave him a lot of confidence going forward in his life to do well. Jack Pizzotti gave a great speech. That was really terrific. Alex Zedros, who was a women's soccer player here, played at Division I UConn and has played professionally in Sweden and in Brazil. There are just so many outstanding athletes and outstanding people. So it's pretty humbling to see that, you know, your own kids get included in that kind of group. And they really did a good job. Coach Sonny Lane, who used to be the athletic director in Melrose, hosted the plaque ceremony, and Nick Schofield did a terrific job at Memorial Hall. And it was just a really good experience for everybody. I look forward to going in the future to see the other athletes get in.
Brady was also in.
Coach Brady was in. He looked great, as did his whole family and his mom and dad. So it's just great to see some people that you don't ordinarily see, and of course thanks to everyone who made that possible. I've enjoyed being with you tonight. I'm Ron Sen.
And I'm Ralph LaBella, and thank you for watching Let's Talk Sports.